to introduce, to bring up to the stage Tim Peck, who's chairman of OBMI. Tim, great to have you
Thank you
with
very much.
us. And you're going to be speaking about resorts and the future of resorts.
And the future of resorts, what a wonderful topic. I think, first of all, I should say good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I do feel a bit bad about saying good afternoon because I know I'm standing between you and your lunch. But hopefully we'll see this as a bit of an appetizer for your lunch. I think we have a wonderful topic which obviously can take our imagination in all sorts of areas. And you know, whether we will be accessing some of these resorts with the help of Richard Branson, we'll see. But I'm going to bring us a little bit more down to earth and relate somewhat to some of the discussions that have been Wolfgang and his team been happening. When we're talking about consumer trends, a lot of those consumer trends are relating somewhat to a certain amount of angst, and that angst relates to the issues of climate change, as was just being discussed. There are issues in relation to kind of stress that all of our consumers have been working with. Stress that's obviously been exacerbated by the strains of COVID. And the stress of you know, wanting to have this vacation, but having to stay connected with a kind of element of reality. And it's a bit of an interesting one. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I was over in, actually probably 3 or 4 years ago, I was out in the Serengeti doing some research on a project. And it was absolutely wonderful. I was in one of these yurts in the middle of the Serengeti, and I woke up in the morning. I was the only person in the camp. There was the sound of the lions, and my phone rings. And darn it, it was the office. But that's the reality of what we're all dealing with in life nowadays. There's a certain amount of connectivity that we have to maintain. Then also, our consumers, they're dealing with social issues. Now, all the social angst that's going with, you know, kind of issues such as Black Lives Matters, the gender issues, the economic inequalities. And how do they feel, how can they feel good about their vacations, taking these vacation experiences and actually feeling good about what comes out of it? Then there's the whole issue of thinking about, you know, kind of what is luxury nowadays, and how do we translate that into a vacation experience. You know, again, the expectations of luxury are seeking these transformational experiences. We're also dealing with, you out there as developers are dealing with some significant headwinds, some of which may be associated with kind of supply chains, may be associated with kind of current cost of construction. And especially when we're talking about accessing some of these more inaccessible areas. So as a company, we've tried to think about aspects of innovation that relate to some of these consumer trends. Innovation, I mean, as an 85-year-old company, obviously we've had to deal with some innovation, otherwise we wouldn't still be here. In actual fact, when we look back on a lot of our projects, many of them were very innovative, but in a very, very sort of subliminal way. So it's trying to actually, we agonized over how we bring this to the forefront of our teams so that it is much more of a head of consciousness move. So I could probably talk for half an hour or longer on this topic because it's been a very interesting process for us. We've created an innovation lab which is now focusing on a lot of aspects of innovation, and we've invested funds and resources into that. And it's taken us off on some interesting travels. And so I'm going to take you down a couple of those travels at the moment, and hopefully they will spur some ideas. It's all about kind of thinking about the what-ifs of this world. And you know, the what-ifs relate to a whole bunch of issues that relate to consumer trends. It's the, you know, what if carbon neutral? What if we could create a kind of an urban product that was kind of revitalized urban areas? There are just so many what ifs out there that we did a lot of green lighting and red lighting to progress that process. So I'm going to take you through 2 of these paths that we took. One of which was looking at the concept of a movable hotel. So basically trying to make it so that the site constraint is not a challenge. So we can explore some of these wonderful parts of the world that our clients are seeking to access. So obviously it's not a totally new concept. Glamping has in the Serengeti where I was, is, you know, that traditionally the tents there have been moving, the tented camps have been moving with the herds across the Serengeti. But we were trying to think, okay, how do we make this kind of more relevant to the aspect of elevating the experience to something which is slightly more sophisticated. So again, thinking through the process, okay, the movable hotel, 0 footprint. So when we do move on, it's like an organism that is part of the earth. We move on, we don't leave a footprint. And then a whole part of this is again thinking about how do we make it so we can access these totally inaccessible locations, which allows all sorts of flexibility in terms of kind of permitting issues, because there's the option then of moving into national parks. There's all sorts of issues where we're dealing with lack of infrastructure, so these all have to be self-contained and kind of operate as their own entity. Easily transportable, okay, well, we set ourselves a parameter of kind of 5% of the asset value would be the cost of moving these things around, so they would be actually be very flexible. And again, part of that was looking at the investment structure that we'd be bringing in to the end of these, because obviously these are detached from the investment in the land, so they become a much more flexible investment structure. And then dealing with kind of reducing the build cost. Again, parameters, we set ourselves 30% of what it would cost to build a normal 5-star hotel room. And then there are obviously ways that we're dealing with that in terms of prefabrication and off-site production. You don't have to deal with accessing some of these remote locations from a construction point of view. So it's interesting that in itself obviously controls timeline. So these are a couple of the models that we came up with, which we lovingly call Habitaire, which we're exploring. There are 2 footprints. There's one which is a wider footprint and one a narrower footprint. So obviously the idea is that you can take these into locations which are generally inaccessible. There's no infrastructure in place. They are totally self-contained. And again, we've been doing a lot of research into materiality, so we're talking about using kind of 0 carbon in terms of the materials that are going into the building, and kind of fabrication systems. So, and these can be used in multiple arrangements. They could become a full resort, and we have units that are designed to become the sort of central facilities for the project. So they can be a total standalone or become part of a resort project. So they are intended to be very modular and intended to provide a high level of sophistication. All of the servicing will be dealt with by the units themselves, so they have their internal kind of servicing structure and deal with all of the kind of the complexities of sewage effluent and whatever. So this is taking our adventure out into the wilderness. And as I say, you can extend it in a variety of different ways to give some flexibility in how it's arranged. So then we said, okay, we've been to the wilderness, let's go back to the city and reimagine how we can reinvent the resort to address the urban context and create that experience that gives you that escape from the city, but also allows you to relate to the city in many respects. And it's all about analyzing the experience that the vacationer is looking for, and how you can actually help them unplug from their normal environment and the stress and strains of their normal environment. So again, you know, we've been designing resorts around the world for way too long, but you know, and so we thought about, okay, we analyze what are the key components in terms of guest satisfaction out of these products. And generally speaking, it's, you know, we're looking at the resort. If you think about the resort that we're in here at the moment, it's basically a very horizontal product, with all of the amenities scattered over quite a large sort of footprint. So let's think about this in an urban context. We actually we've looked at a number of sites within Dubai as our typical footprint. But I mean, this can be translated to anywhere across the globe, but we use Dubai as a typical example. Okay, so how can we convert what is generally a horizontal format into something which is much more vertical? And again, what we would love to do with this process is actually give back to the city. So we're creating something which has kind of value to its environment around it. So freeing up the ground plane with parkland and landscaping, and that becomes part of the arrival experience. It becomes part of the interface with the city. Within that, then, we're creating a sort of curated environment within the skin of this vertical resort, which will allow it to be climate controlled and allow you to do a number of wonderful things in terms of creating kind of atmosphere and within the building itself. And then, obviously, when you think about your traditional resort, landscaping becomes a major feature between the buildings. So how do you address that in a vertical format? Again, thinking of the resort here, we have the souk, we have the beach, we have a kind of a number of districts and amenities. We create that in a vertical format. So I'm going to show you kind of how we've sort of addressed that as an experience. So first of all, it's that whole kind of arrival experience, and that's it is part of that unplugging. We've created the ground plane, which is now part of the city as part of an urban park. And so you're parking in this urban park. So we'll bring the landscaping down into the parking, assuming the parking is going to be located below the building. And certainly it's creating that escape from the city is obviously the critical feel that we're trying to bring into this kind of unplugging process. So you'd arrive in this wonderful kind of natural oasis within the city, which is all part of this curated, controlled environment. And then you'd be traveling up through the vertical resort in a glass elevator that takes you up to the what is effectively the lobby, the sky lobby up at the high level. The sky lobby, the assumption is that you will have checked in online, so the lobby is certainly not a traditional lobby. It's a lobby in terms of a lounge and in terms of a customer interface with the resort as a product. It is also somewhat the public interface of the building. So from the sky lobby, you would be transferring down to your individual suites. The hotel suites will have options. Some of them will have views into the atria themselves. Some of them will have views out over the city, and a lot of them will be themed with the districts that they're associated with, so that it all becomes part of the experience. So, for example, you would have in there the dining district, which celebrates the heart of the culinary activities. There would be options within the dining district for taking a dining vacation, for dining school, dining classes, and everything that goes with it. Obviously, you have visiting celebrity chefs, and there'll be a certain amount of flexibility. A lot of these spaces are designed to be very flexible to allow for pop-up experiences. You would have in there the wellness district, which is really, I guess, somewhat you think of it as your traditional spa, but then they'll be integrated within that a whole sort of wellness culture. You'll have your rooms, your suites associated with the wellness district. The wellness will be sort of themed throughout, and allow for the elements of relaxation, but also allow for full fitness cycles within that as well. The art district. Bringing art and fashion, and again, this becomes part of the hotel program as well. So it's not there as decoration; it's there as part of the culture and a part of the culture of the hotel experience. So you can go in there for a week's art course. You'll have visiting artists. You'll have galleries that allow for kind of pop-up exhibitions within that itself. And again, because we're an enclosed, curated environment, it allows us to create all sorts of experiences within those atria, which will be celebrating the themes. We have the drama district. Again, within the drama district, that also can be an activity which becomes something that you market to your consumers, so that we will have drama courses. Obviously, there'll be drama activities happening within the atria themselves and specialized auditoria. We will then be moving on to, well, obviously within there as well, there'll be the business districts and variety of different activities. So I say all of this would be set up in a situation which would be, obviously from the outside of the building, you can see and feel the activities that are taking place within the building. So it just becomes a real celebration of the hospitality experience in the broadest sense. So we're again, there was just literally a whistle-stop tour through a couple of ideas that we're exploring as a company. And what is really important for us is to we work with our stakeholders. The movable hotel, we're actually going into production with the first prototype at the moment with stakeholders. Throughout all of this process, we have been dealing with brands, we've been dealing with developers to test this in the marketplace. where afterwards we have a session in the chat room, and you're all welcome to come and obviously this has had to be a pretty fast introduction to some of the thoughts and ideas that we're working on. Please, we really want to hear from you, what you think about some of these ideas, and ideas that you may have that we should be thinking about, because we're doing this for your industry. You know, we're invested in your hospitality industry, and it's really very much part of our culture. And I think I'm down to 0. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.